Betrayal doesn't hit like a slap. It seeps in, slow and silent, until one day you wake up and realize your whole life was a lie. I was 32, a hard-working mechanic, and I thought I had it all. A wife I adored, a future we were building together. But love can blind you, make you ignore the signs that are right in front of you. And when the truth finally came out, it wasn't just painful. It was humiliating. She thought she could take everything from me. She thought I'd just roll over. She had no idea what was coming. They say betrayal doesn't hit you all at once. It seeps in like a slow poison, undetected until it's too late. I never thought I'd be the guy telling this kind of story, but here I am. My name's Jake. I'm 32, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's that trust is a dangerous game. I've been a mechanic for years, covered in grease and oil, but I love what I do. There's a kind of satisfaction in fixing things, in knowing that what's broken can be repaired. 2. Bad life doesn't work the same way. I met Sarah on what I thought was just another ordinary day at the shop. She walked in, all confidence and charm, complaining about a strange noise coming from her car. I took a quick look, but honestly, my mind wasn't on the engine. It was on her. She had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, we were inseparable. It felt like one of those whirlwind romances, the kind that blinds you before you see what's coming. At first, everything was perfect. Too perfect, maybe. We laughed, made plans, and built a life together. But my sister, Jenny, wasn't convinced. She always had this gut feeling about Sarah, like she saw something I didn't. I brushed it off, thinking she was just being overprotective. Looking back now, I should have listened. There were little cracks in the foundation, things I ignored, because I wanted to believe in the fairy tale. I told myself love was enough. I told myself Sarah was different. But love doesn't hide in the shadows. It doesn't make you second-guess your worth. The first signs were subtle, a hesitation in her voice, a shift in her gaze, a new habit of checking her phone just a little too often. I ignored them, thinking I was just being paranoid. After all, she was my wife. But deep down, something didn't feel right, and I was about to find out why. It's funny how hindsight works. You look back and see all the red flags you ignored, all the warnings you dismissed. At the time, though, I wasn't looking for trouble. I was too busy convincing myself everything was fine. Jenny wasn't. She never fully trusted Sarah, and she made it clear every chance she got. "There's something off about her," she'd say. I'd roll my eyes, call her paranoid, tell her she was being unfair. But deep down, a tiny voice inside me wondered if she was right. Sarah had always been supportive. At least, that's what I thought. But over time, little things started to slip. She hesitated before telling people what I did for a living, sometimes calling me a business owner instead of a mechanic. At first, I laughed it off, but the more it happened, the more it stung. Was she embarrassed? Did she think I wasn't good enough? It was a small thing, but small things add up. And when you start questioning one part of your relationship, the doubts spread like wildfire. Then came the excuses. Late meetings. Last-minute plans with friends I never met. She'd come home distracted, her mind elsewhere, brushing off my questions with quick answers. "Work's just been stressful," she'd say, offering a tired smile. But it wasn't just work. There was something else, something she wasn't telling me. And every time I asked, the distance between us grew. I wanted to trust her. I needed to trust her. But trust isn't blind, at least it shouldn't be. The breaking point came when I noticed her phone habits changing. She never used to care about it much. But now it was always in her hand, her screen lighting up with messages she never let me see. Once, I walked in on her mid-text, and she nearly jumped out of her skin. "Just Jenny," she said too quickly, except Jenny wasn't the one texting her. I knew it, she knew it, but neither of us said a word. Not yet. Denial is a powerful thing. Even when the signs are right in front of you, you convince yourself they mean nothing. I told myself Sarah was just stressed, that I was overthinking things, but doubt has a way of creeping in, eating at you, making you see things you don't want to see. And then one night, I saw everything. It was during her company's annual party, an event I usually skipped. But this time, I decided to go. Maybe I just wanted to prove myself wrong, to see Sarah in her element and confirm that my suspicions were all in my head. But the moment I walked in, my stomach dropped. She was there, standing too close to a guy I'd never met before. Mark. They weren't touching, not exactly, but the way they looked at each other said enough. I felt like an outsider in my own marriage. I tried to brush it off, tried to ignore the way she laughed at his jokes like he was the funniest guy in the world. But then, a woman I barely knew from her office leaned in and said almost casually, "You're taking this well. Most husbands wouldn't." I blinked. Taking what well? She hesitated, suddenly realizing she'd said too much. But the damage was done. That's when it hit me. Everyone in that room knew something I didn't. The rest of the night was a blur. I watched Sarah, studied her, saw every little secret in the way she moved around Mark. And for the first time, I stopped lying to myself. The pieces had been there all along, but now they fit together. And once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. I just didn't know how deep the betrayal went. Not yet. Suspicions are one thing. Proof is another. And once you have proof, there's no going back. I needed to know for sure, to rip off the bandage and see the wound for what it really was. So I did what any betrayed man would do. I started paying attention. And it didn't take long to find what I was looking for. It started with bank statements. Sarah and I shared an account, and while I never cared much about where the money went, this time I did. Luxury hotels, expensive dinners, charges that didn't match our usual routine. My stomach turned when I saw the dates. Weekends she'd told me she was working late. But it got worse. I found saved searches on her laptop, homes for sale in another city, places she and Mark were apparently planning to move into. Our future, replaced with one she was building with him. That night, I waited for her to come home. I had the receipts, laid out on the table, my hands shaking with anger I barely contained. When she walked in, she froze. She knew. I knew. And there was no point pretending anymore. But before she could speak, I heard footsteps. Another set. And then, there he was, Mark, in my house. He had the nerve to look surprised, like he hadn't just walked into the worst mistake of his life. I don't remember much of what I said. I just remember the moment I pointed to the door and told him to get out. Sarah tried to argue, but I wasn't listening. Not anymore. The man she had chosen over me was standing in my living room, and in that moment, I knew exactly what I had to do. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about reclaiming what was mine. If I thought the worst was over, I was wrong. The confrontation was just the beginning. Sarah didn't crumble, didn't apologize. She doubled down. As if she was the victim here, as if I was the one who had done something wrong. And when the divorce papers came, I realized she wasn't just leaving me. She was coming for everything I had. She and her family acted like they had already won. They wanted half of my savings, my house, my car, hell, even my tools, the very things I used to make a living. Her father, a man who had never respected me, suddenly had a lot to say. He sat me down, tried to reason with me, saying I should just sign the agreement and move on. "It's just money," he said, easy for him to say. It wasn't just money. It was my life. I played it smart. I didn't fight, didn't argue. Let them think they were in control. The lawyers went back and forth, and every demand they made was more outrageous than the last. Sarah acted like she was entitled to everything, like she had earned it, like she deserved to walk away with my hard work while I was left with nothing. It was almost impressive, the level of arrogance. But she had no idea what was coming. Because while they were busy counting what they thought they'd take from me, I was preparing my next move. They assumed I was just some guy with a wrench, that I'd roll over and accept defeat. They had no clue what I had been planning for months. And when the court date finally came, I was ready. Courtrooms have a way of exposing people. You strip away the fake smiles, the rehearsed words, and all that's left is the truth. Sarah walked in with her head high, her family right behind her, as if this was just a formality before they took what was theirs. Mark even showed up, sitting smugly as if he had already won. But they didn't know what I had up my sleeve. Their argument was predictable. Sarah claimed she had grown accustomed to a certain lifestyle, that she had contributed to our marriage in ways that weren't financial. And Mark, he presented his salary, subtly implying that Sarah would be better off with him. It was almost laughable. They weren't just trying to take my money, they were trying to rewrite history, painting me as some struggling mechanic while Mark was her knight in shining armor. But fairy tales don't end the way you expect. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't say much. I didn't need to. Instead, I handed over a document, one that I had signed months before Sarah's betrayal. The deed to the shop where I worked. Because, unlike what she had told everyone, I wasn't just a mechanic, I owned the entire business. And suddenly, the power dynamic shifted. The judge saw it, Sarah saw it, and Mark? He didn't look so smug anymore. Silence filled the room. Sarah's father, who had been so sure of his daughter's victory, went pale. Mark shifted in his seat, suddenly realizing that the future he had built with Sarah wasn't going to be funded by my money. And just like that, their entire case fell apart. They thought they were taking me down, but in reality, they had underestimated the one thing they never saw coming: me. You could hear a pin drop in that courtroom. Sarah's confidence vanished in an instant, replaced by something I'd never seen on her face before. Fear. Not fear of me, but fear of what she was about to lose. Her father sat frozen, like he was replaying every mistake they had made leading up to this moment. And Mark? Well, he suddenly wasn't so eager to be part of her future anymore. The judge wasted no time. With my business fully owned and protected, Sarah had no legal claim to it. The house, mine. The savings, mine. She would walk away with exactly what she had brought into the marriage, which, to be honest, wasn't much. Mark, the man she had risked everything for, suddenly looked like he was second-guessing his choices. Maybe he thought he was upgrading when he took my wife. Now he realized he'd picked up a liability. And just like that, the tables turned. Sarah, who had walked in believing she was about to take me for everything, now sat there watching everything slip through her fingers. Her father tried to speak, to argue, but the judge shut him down. Facts were facts, and the fact was, Sarah had gambled and lost. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The look on her face was more satisfying than any victory speech I could have given. As the hearing wrapped up, I caught Mark's expression one last time. He wasn't looking at Sarah like a man in love. He was looking at her like someone who had just realized he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. And as for Sarah, well, for the first time, she finally understood what it felt like to lose. Losing. The case was just the beginning of Sarah's downfall. She left that courtroom with nothing but her car and a small compensation, barely enough to cover a few months of rent. The life she had envisioned, the one she thought she'd build with. Mark started crumbling before her eyes, and it didn't take long for reality to hit her hard. She quit her job not long after, though I suspect it wasn't entirely her choice. Turns out, workplace affairs aren't great for professional reputations. Rumors spread fast, and the same. People who once gossiped about me were now whispering about her. She even tried suing her company for discrimination, claiming she had been forced out unfairly. But just like in court, she lost. Mark, her so-called upgrade, stopped showing up. It was almost poetic. While she struggled, I thrived. With no more distractions, I poured everything into my business. The shop expanded, and within a year, I opened a second location. The same people who once looked down on me, Sarah's friends, her family, suddenly saw me in a different light. They didn't mock my work anymore. They respected it. Funny how success changes perspectives. As for Sarah, she tried reaching out once, some vague message about talking things through. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. She had made her choice, and I had made mine. The difference? Mine led to something better. Hers led to a dead end. Success has a way of rewriting history. The same people who once looked down on me, the ones who laughed at my job, whispered behind my back, now acted like they had always been in my corner. Suddenly, I wasn't just a mechanic. I was a business owner, a self-made man. And the irony? The same people who had sided with Sarah now wanted favors from me. Some of her old friends started showing up at my shop, acting all friendly, like we had some shared past worth reminiscing about. "Hey Jake, long time, huh?" they'd say, pretending they hadn't mocked me just months before. They wanted discounts, free work, special treatment. I didn't hold grudges, but I also wasn't stupid. I smiled, nodded, and charged them full price. Business is business. Then there was Sarah's father. The same man who once treated me like I wasn't good enough for his daughter now tried spinning a different story. He told people he had always believed in me, that he knew I had potential. He even hinted that he had guided me toward success, as if he had played any role in my journey. It was almost entertaining, watching him scramble to attach himself to my achievements. But I didn't waste my time correcting him. The truth spoke for itself. Through it all, I stayed focused. I had nothing to prove to anyone. I wasn't looking for revenge or validation. I had learned the hard way that people's opinions change with the wind. What mattered wasn't what they thought of me now, it was what I thought of myself. And for the first time in a long time, I was proud of the man I had become. People always ask if I've moved on, if I'm dating again. The truth? I'm not in a rush. After everything I've been through, I've learned that peace is better than chasing something that isn't real. My business is thriving, my life is stable, and for the first time in years, I'm in control. That's worth more than any rushed relationship. Sarah? I don't think about her much anymore. I don't check up on her, don't wonder how she's doing. I used to believe closure meant getting answers, but I've realized it's just about letting go. Some people destroy themselves without you having to lift a finger. And from what I hear, she's learning that the hard way. It's funny how life works. A year ago, I thought losing Sarah was the worst thing that could happen to me. Now, I see it as the best. I got rid of a person who never truly valued me, and in the process, I built something even better. Myself. The best revenge? It isn't anger. It isn't proving a point. It's success. And I'm just getting started. So, am I bitter? No. Am I broken? Definitely not. If anything, I'm grateful. Because sometimes, losing everything is exactly what you need to find yourself again.
Keep watching our stories by clicking on one of the videos that appear on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to be alerted about new videos. See you next time.